realized, a lot of people live over here who have done significant things. One of the pioneers of AI also lives over here. So anyways, so we decided that we really should be sharing our information and our stories with each other, with the fellow entrepreneurs, with fellow hackers, geeks, and aspiring entrepreneurs. And one of the points of this event is to show that it really isn't that unrealistic. He's right here. I can touch him. and the point of this event is really supposed to be more of an intimate interaction, as opposed to one where you're just listening to a speaker from the podium. So hence our very ad hoc nature. So after we'll start off with listening to Keith. After that, it's going to be question and answer session, and and after that you can come up to him, introduce yourself to others who are over here, because I'm sure there's plenty of very, very interesting folks out here tonight. So just a brief introduction of Keith. To me, he needs no introduction, but to those of you who haven't read the meetup notices and whatnot, Keith is proud to call him my friend and a friend to our community here. He is a software developer and a hardcore geek, and of course, they happen to start this little company called SpringSource. You may have heard of it if you're in the Java world. All right, that one didn't get noticed when the last one I thought it was.
How many of you guys have heard of SpringSource? All right.
All right, to all the Java guys in the room. And Keith's been doing a lot of great things in our community. He started SteadyTown, which has been growing phenomenally. Sitting back and watching, I've just been blown away at how fast SteadyTown's been growing. Well, I'll actually let him tell you more about SteadyTown. It's a great nonprofit, incubated from right here in TrepHub. And for those of you who don't know what TrepHub is, I'll do a short plug at the end. Feel free to pull over any of the guys you see with this Super Trep shirt on, and we'll explain more to you about what we do here at TrepHub.
I'm on the board of TrepHub.
So without further ado, I'll go ahead and let Keith get started. So Keith, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started in your early days here?
Okay. Well, guys, I came to Brevard County in 2000, so I've been here almost 14 years now. I came here in June of 2000, right out of school. So I graduated from the University of Alabama, so Roll Tide. Yeah, there's my wife here. That's Carrie, my wife, and that was a conversation starter for us when I moved here. She graduated from Alabama as well. She was the top CS student at University of Alabama in 1998. I graduated with a degree from the business school in management information systems. So she likes to make fun of me because she's like, you didn't really cut it as an engineer. But the way I looked at school was I grew up kind of a geek and learning how to build software and learning different computer programming languages. I ran a bulletin board for a while. I was using the internet in 1993. And I always felt like just comfortable with technology, and I could cut the technology. I could handle the technical stuff. But what I wanted to go to school was for business, so I could blend technology with business. And that's why I chose that path. Looking back, I think it served me well leading into my career. So what brought me down to Brevard County was a job at Harris Corporation. So I think if you've lived in Brevard long enough, you've probably worked at Harris. All right, so how many of you guys have worked at Harris at one point or the other? All right, I know a couple of you guys still work there. It's a great company. I had 5 job offers out of school, but I chose to come here because Harris gave me the job that I wanted, which was hardcore software engineering, doing some really cool stuff. So I joined their network support division at the time and worked on a cool product called NetBoss. Some of you may have heard of it. It's a fault management system for telecommunication networks. And it was the best job. I mean, hardcore C and C++ development, later Java development. And I worked at Harris for 3 years. So I turned down job opportunities from IBM in Boulder, Colorado, which is a nice location, but I was going to be doing like mainframe support. They didn't give me the job I wanted. International paper, American Management Systems, Accenture, but I came here because I saw this area as a hotbed of engineering talent, doing some really cool things with right on the beach in Central Florida, where, I mean, you can really blend technology and nature, and there's so much here in Brevard County, and I've liked this area so much, I've just, decided to just stay. And this is where we're raising our family. So I worked at Harris for 3 years, and towards the end of my tenure there, I started doing a lot more Java development. Early on, it was C and C++ development on their existing systems. Later, it was next generation development on new systems using the Java platform. And in those days, how many of you guys are Java developers or software developers in general? Yeah, so a number of you. The platform for building enterprise Java apps, J2EE, was pretty complex. And I'll be honest, the team at Harris that was charged with building this next generation system, we didn't know what we were doing at all. So, and one of the things that we did, I think that was a mistake that we learned from, was we got an infusion of money to build this new thing. But we didn't really know what we were going to build exactly, and we didn't know the platform. So we hired a bunch of people, but we didn't really know what we were doing, and that's not a good combination, right? And one of the things that became clear to me early on was this platform is complicated and over-enginered and not productive if you're a software engineer. And
Those are pretty rare.
yeah, and it's Sun Microsystems and their platform, and it was very powerful, but very difficult to use. So I think one of the best decisions I made in my career was, not just accepting that, being willing to look, how can this be made simpler? How can we do this a better way that's more efficient, more productive, where we can focus on the core of what we need to build and not get drugged down by, complicated technical infrastructure that has nothing to do with the business domain. And about that time, it was late 2002, I read a book on Java and J2EE by a man named Rod Johnson. He's from the UK. He's also from Australia. He's got dual citizenship. He's actually was born in Australia but lived in the UK. And he was a J2EE or Java consultant. And he wrote this very influential book called J2EE Design and Development. And basically it was everything that's wrong with our industry articulated in one book, and a better alternative, or at least highlighting the potential for a better, simpler alternative that would make building Java apps more productive for engineers and developers. And I read that book the month it was published and immediately identified with it. And I was like, this is the way we need to be building software, not the way we're headed. And I made the case at Harris that we needed to look at this. We need to consider simplifying things. And I was a junior engineer who didn't really listen that much, did his own thing, and they were like, you don't know what you're talking about. And that became a source of frustration for me, but I think an entrepreneur is not going to give up. They're going to keep trying to find a way to get what they believe is right because they're passionate about it done. And ultimately, Harris did not listen to me. So I left. And I looked, but I didn't just quit my job with no path. I looked for another alternative that would allow me the opportunity to apply what I believed and that was from what I read in Rod's book. So I joined a smaller company here in town off NASA Boulevard in Evans Computer Science Innovations. They were known by it at the time. This was 2003. They're now part of Northrop Grumman. Oh, and they had an ESOP program too, so when they got acquired, I got a bonus check in the mail one day. That was really cool after I'd stepped away. There at Computer Science Innovations, it was a smaller team. I got more control over the technical architecture and the direction of what they needed done, and I was able to apply more of the principles that I was reading and believing in Rod's book. And out of that book came some software. And that software became the foundation for a technology called the Spring Framework. It was later rebranded as Spring. So this was in February of 2003, March 2003. And that, so that was, I basically, at that time, had the opportunity to use the very early version of Spring before it was even really released. It was like 0.9 was the version at the time. And start contributing to that community that was growing around this technology. And the community was on the web, right? So you had basically just a bunch of engineers that were sick of old J2E, wanted something simpler, that all had read Rod's book like me, and wanted to move these ideas and that technology forward. And we turned to open source and the internet as a way of doing that. So Rod took the ideas from the book and created an open source project hosted on SourceForge. That was the big thing of the day back then. Now it's GitHub, for social coding. Wow, that's old school. SourceForge.
Well, just to demystify for folks who are not software engineers, or who are not really heavy into Java, Spring is open source.
Yeah.
So it's it's kind of interesting to see how that goes from open source to something that generates revenue. Open source doesn't necessarily mean that you can't make money.
Yeah, the way we made our money in the early days was we were all working for companies that paid us to build things for them. But they were like, we don't care how you build it, just build it on time and within budget. And if this tool makes you more productive, great. And so they were cool with us using then open source technology, using this thing that was developed in the open, given away for free, that other developers could use and contribute to. And quite frankly, there became a trend around that idea, because what we were building wasn't core to my company's business. It was generic infrastructure, accessing a database efficiently, working with transactions and transaction management, building web apps, mapping between relational data and object-oriented data, all kinds of mumbo-jumbo stuff, just that applied to across any particular type of business or business domain. We did that without ever meeting one another. And the core team back in those early days consisted of Rod, who was living in London, working as a consultant, just wrote his book. Jürgen Haller, who was based in Linz, Austria. Adrian Collier and Rob Harrop, who were also based in the UK. A guy who was Ben Alex, who was Australian. A guy named Colin Sampliano, based in Toronto, Canada. And then me in Melbourne, Florida. And so it was a small team that was distributed, and we'd never really met in person, but we'd all identified around the same ideas and vision for our industry as Java developers. And we had this foundation that grew out of this book that our leader, Rod Johnson, wrote. And pretty soon, more and more people became interested in this technology. So both as either users or extenders, and then we started getting approached by other businesses that wanted to integrate this technology into their own applications and wanted us to help them do that. So while I was at CSI, I was getting offers at $250 an hour to come, train some team within a Fortune 500 company, how to use Spring, to improve their developers' productivity.
And I was like, whoa, that's kind of cool.
I wouldn't mind that now.
Yeah, this was 2003. So that was kind of neat, and we were like, so we didn't really know where it was going to go, but we knew it was helping us be more productive, and we were looking good to our bosses because we were getting our stuff done with simpler tools than what Sun Microsystems was selling, and that kept us going. We believed in it, and the way we paid the bills was, through our salaries at our day jobs. And then slowly starting to do consulting. And my strategy for doing that at CSI was I got offered back even then to write a book, a very early book on Spring. And I was like, interesting. So I was like, maybe if I tell them I'm writing a book, they'll let me go on sabbatical for 6 months. And then I can, still have the opportunity to come back to work if it doesn't work out. But if it does, then I can just run with it. And that was my experiment to see if I could help them build a business around this technology. And that's basically, I never came back to CSI. I went on sabbatical and was like, okay, I've decided to stick with it. But it was carefully thought out, I guess, on my part, trying to, balance the risk reward. I want to take the risk, but I still, I'm thinking slow about how I do it. But what was really continuing to drive me forward was the belief in the technology. I believed that this technology could become as popular as it had the potential to become. I think we could be very successful, but I think we could change our industry for the better. And that is what drove me to keep going.
I got a quick question for you. So, many of us may have been in a situation where, we're doing this cool thing, and we really believe in it. And I've been through this myself with TrepHub. How do you convince? You're married at the time, right?
Yes.
So, how'd you convince Carrie that I'm going to take off from this job and go do this thing here?
Well, it helped that I was a saver and she was a spender. so I had some money saved up. So that helped. It also helped that I could get my old job back. I made that clear. I was very, I thought that through if I needed to. And then it helped that these companies were offering us $250 an hour to go train and consult on this technology that was in its infancy. So we never had a shortage of demand for that. Now, that's not very scalable. You can't build a business, a scalable business that can be acquired for hundreds of millions of dollars through, in my opinion, through people-oriented consulting. Software is more scalable as a business model. But shoot, back then it was like, man, this is way more than I've made before. This is great. So that was an easy sell, I think, right, Carrie? But what became more challenging,
I also had a full-time job as a software.
Oh yeah, that helped. Right. In fact, she made more money than me, so I can't believe I'm overlooking that. Yeah, actually, you were making more than me.
Little detail there.
Yeah, little detail, but yeah, she reminds me of that every day. But I think, though, what became more challenging as it progressed was, we didn't get paid for the software. We gave the software away. So if I was working on the software, I was not making any money. So, and it was a new technology. It wasn't finished. We needed to get it to a certain level where we thought it had the potential for sort of mass market adoption. But we weren't going to get paid for that. So we had to balance moving the software forward, to drive adoption with paying the bills. And that became a demand on our relationship in terms of the time commitment that I had to make. So I was literally...
How much time were you spending at this point?
I was working, 80, I don't know, I was working 8 hours during the day and then the same at night. So 16.
Like starting any other business.
Yeah, that's right. And it definitely took a toll on me after 2 years of doing that.
That's almost like having a bad project engineer.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, I would be out training, consulting, traveling, teaching on Spring all over the country, and sometimes in Europe and other areas in other countries during the day, and then working on the technology at night. And we were all doing that. And yeah, that was definitely challenging to balance, because we wanted technology leadership. We wanted to be a leader in our field, and we wanted to displace the established status quo or existing technology. And we felt we had the potential to do that, so we had to do that. You know, but then we also had to have business operations that allowed us to, you know, continue to go. And we weren't taking any money in at that time. There was no outside investment in our company. We were bootstrapped organically. And I was a big proponent of that. Like, I did not want to take VC money. I was like, we can do this ourselves.
Why is that?
I just felt like that because we had the demand already. We just had to figure out the right business model, and you know, and run and be efficient with our operations. And you know, that's really hard to do. You know, with, you know, at least, and you know, and I think that we were a bunch of tech geeks. You know, we weren't business guys really. So I think in the end we did take VC money and bring in help on the business side, especially to help us get to that next level of growth. And I can talk more about the details on that. But basically, yeah, for the first, we started, so I left Computer Science Innovations probably in August of 2004, and we formed Interface 21 at that time, as it was called, which was not a good name. So our product was called Spring, but we were Interface 21.
How long was that for?
No one remembers or cares, because it was a bad name. But we were like, sure, it's a great name, Rod, because it was Rod's company's name. And we were like, whatever you say. But yeah, very early on, you know, we realized this isn't working. We're showing up at Java 1, you know, the big Java users conference, and people see the Interface 21 booth, and they're like, who are you guys? And they're like, we're Spring. We're like, oh, we know Spring. We don't know you guys. Well, we created it. And we're like, okay, maybe we should change our name to something a little bit clearer in terms of the branding with the technology. So we renamed us to Spring Source, much better name. And that happened pretty early as well. But so we started in 2004, and I think my first major contribution to the business that I was most proud of was helping us build a legitimate training business for the technology. It was our first $1 million business. So like I said, I was working full-time during the day delivering training, consulting, short-term engagements, and working on the technology at night. But then we realized, hey, we can take what we're doing out of the field and package it up into a training product, hire instructors, and scale that business. And do that without having to take outside money to get that part going. And then use the profits from that to finance the next level of growth. So I took that responsibility on. And that was our first $1 million business. So I was very proud of that. You know, training isn't as scalable as software, commercial software licensing, but it was still you know, very profitable, and I believed in it because it was, and the importance of it, because it was critical to the adoption of our software, which we needed to go to the next level. So I was the principal author of our training curriculum, which we rolled out worldwide. And I don't know the numbers at this point, but we've trained, you know, I would say over, I don't know, 25,000
Wow.
plus developers on Spring worldwide.
So that helped you bootstrap longer, right?
Yes, that's how we bootstrapped.
Okay.
Was through that business. And I was and what I saw in our, you know, when we were out delivering the training was our material wasn't structured in a way where we could hire somebody and they could come on and be efficient at delivering it themselves. Like, it took one of us to make it work. So we had to put engineering time in, creating a curriculum that then we could use, basically productize and sell, and then hire people to run. And that was our first real business. And I hired about 15 engineers that also, they worked on Spring, but they also did our training services. And I poached 3 away from Harris Corporation, from the old NetBoss group. Ben Hale, and Jennifer Hickey, and Jason Kanicki. And you know, Ben is still with SpringSource, and Ben and Jason both are still with SpringSource. Jennifer recently, just recently stepped aside, and she's going to law school to be Emory. Got accepted to Emory.
Nice.
And civil rights she's going to be focusing on, which is kind of neat. But so in those early days, we probably were 20 people, and we had an office of 5 in Melbourne. So we had a decent office in Melbourne.
So you guys were doing a decent amount of revenue then, to be able to have 20 engineers.
That's right. Yeah, we were $1 million company.
Okay.
And we started branching out. We not just doing training, but doing more support. So, you know, a big company like HSBC Bank would adopt Spring organization-wide. And, you know, and they want somebody to choke if, you know, something goes wrong with the technology. So they wanted to hire the company behind the technology to provide the support in case something went wrong. So that was our first big support deal. And that's where we started then building a sales organization to sell to those CIOs that would, you know, top down standardize on our infrastructure and give us a big support contract.
So this is how you contributed to the housing crash.
Yes, Spring is heavily used in all the mortgage-backed security trading and all that stuff. That was one of the causes of our financial crisis.
I know.
Yes, well, yeah, a lot of those tech systems are using Java and Spring, absolutely. I did a lot of training on Wall Street and the Chicago Mercantile Exchange.
So how big was that contract?
That was a $1 million contract, 1 million plus. Yeah.
So to those of us who have this problem of, you know, figuring out what to do with millions of dollars, I think Keith has some banking tips, right?
Oh, well, this is a cool story. This was one of my things I thought was the coolest thing that happened to me. Because we were a small company, and we got our first $1 million contract, multi-million-dollar contract over several years. Because our training was making good money, but you didn't have the big deals. So our top sales guys closed a huge deal with HSBC. All the checks for the whole U.S. company came to my house at the time, which was hilarious. So I'm not kidding you. A check for $1 million came to my house, and I took it to the Wachovia on US 192. Yes, and put it in our bank. And they looked at me like I was a terrorist or something. They didn't know what to do with it. They put the sign on them that said large deposit. I was like, it was like they were sounding a horn or something. And it took a special approval for the deposit to be done. It was crazy. But I remember that like it was yesterday. So that was probably 2005.
What were you wearing?
Probably something like this, jeans and a t-shirt. Yeah.
So when depositing your $1 million checks, 3-piece suit, right?
Yeah. Hey, Deb.
So at that time, when you spun off the training business, you mentioned that you wanted to take the business to the next level. Did you have a bunch of levels mapped out at the time where you wanted to go?
Well, we knew there was training, consulting, and support. And we knew we wanted to develop the support business because it was more scalable. And we saw that, you know, HSBC paid us this big amount of money, and they only call us if there's a problem. Right? So
That was as far as you had to play.
that's pretty nice. So how can we do that, you know, again and again and again? And that was, you know, how, and I was like, so we don't need to take VC money. And I was against it. And about that time, Oracle started.
How often did they have problems in calling you? What was your workload?
It wasn't not that much. But, you know, so we used that money for our engineering costs. But we had A-list engineers that were expensive. So, I mean, you know, we were profitable, but, you know, we hired the best. And we paid them well. So about that time, Oracle started noticing what we were doing. That, you know, and Spring represented, I think, a threat to them. They didn't really care that much about us. They're huge and we're tiny.
They had already bought Sun or not yet?
No, that was before. It was maybe 2006, this was. So we started in 2004 and 2006.
They might be a WebLogic?
Yeah, they had recently bought WebLogic. Yeah, which is an application server technology that Spring could be used with. But they were seeing that more and more people were using Spring without a commercial grade server, which was a big part of their business. And so they're like, man, people are going to be using Spring and Tomcat together and paying SpringSource for the support instead of paying us. We need to take them out. So they offered us $25 million to buy us out. So we said no. But we had a vote on it.
How'd that go?
And I was unsure because I was pissed off because we were working so much, and I just felt like operationally we weren't as organized as we should have been, and we weren't managing the growth, and we were overworked, and you work hard, and we've been doing it for 2 years at that point, and I was starting to get a little burnt out, honestly, but that's part of the strain of it, but we said no. And that was a very good decision because they would have bought our technology and put it on a shelf. And we wouldn't have got where we were, And Spring today is way more popular than it was back then, and more entrenched, and the usage is, has a lot more penetration. So that was our first offer, though, to buy our business. So we turned down $25 million. But it was a very good decision. And then about that time, Rod made the decision that, okay, we need to really get to that next level, we need help. Because we're a bunch of techies trying to scale a business to go from like maybe a $5 million business or whatever we were at the time to like a $50 million business. And we're not gonna get it done by ourselves. So we just don't have the business skills to do that. And quite honestly, many of us wanted to stay in engineering because again, you've got to excel in technology leadership too, because we weren't done with that either. So Rod uprooted his family from the UK and moved to the Bay Area, and started working with venture capital firms there, leading venture capital firms. And he's a visionary, very good salesman. And before I knew it, he had secured us $10 million in venture capital financing to finance the next phase of our growth, and particularly a deeper investment in engineering, also in acquisitions of technologies that would complement Spring.
So you were already worth, like you'd gotten an offer for $25 million.
Yeah.
So you were already worth a good chunk.
Yeah, in terms of the...
How much did you have to give up for that $10 million investment?
Not much. I would say... I'm trying to think the exact numbers. I want to say between around 10% of the company, 10 to 15%, not much. So the valuation was really good. And it was based on similar companies that had large exits, I guess. I think that's where Rod was really able to show, if you stick with us, we'll do what they did. And JBoss was the main reference company. They were sold to Red Hat for $380 million, something like that. So I'm sure that I know, and Rod hated JBoss. So Rod was going to do whatever it took to be acquired for more than what JBoss was acquired for. So he could, say, Mark Fleury, I told you so. He was the JBoss CEO. So he was able to secure a great valuation for us to raise the money we needed without giving up too much of the company. And we only did 2 rounds of VC funding by the time we were acquired. That was the first round, and we raised $10 million. And the next round, we raised $15 million. And altogether, I'd say the VCs owned about 20% of the company. So we kept control of the company throughout. The first round was done by Benchmark Capital. The VC is actually still very successful venture capitalist, Peter Fenton. He's invested in Twitter, Airbnb. He's continued success after success. He's not hurting. But he was our main partner at Benchmark that helped us, go to the next level kind of thing. And then the second round was another A-list venture capital firm, Excel Partners, or Excel Capital. with Benchmark 2 participating in that.
So was the venture, was the money really needed by you guys at the time, or was it more that you took on the
Yeah, it was
VC
needed.
partners?
Yeah,
Did you get more than money with the VCs?
what's that?
Did you get more than money? Like, as in, did you get
Oh,
some
you
connections?
got money and you got connections, and we got a whole executive team that was brought in to help us build a real sales organization to go out, instead of getting that one support deal, to get the next one and the next one and the next one, to scale a real inbound sales group. We brought in a COO, a chief marketing officer, a chief financial officer. We were all of those things before. And then of course you bring in some of them, and some of them are great, and others aren't so good. So you fire them and you hire somebody that's better. And then there was some of that too. And then what I was doing at the time, so I'd helped us with our training business, and but the day the money came, I was happy though. In the end, I was like, this is a good decision, because immediately the pressure was off us in the engineering side. We could actually have a dedicated engineering team and not have to worry about going and making money. Just focusing on the technology and moving it forward as the foundation for everything else. And that's, so after that day, that's kind of where I went back to working on Spring, because I'm a software engineer. So I was the lead of Spring MVC, which is Spring's web framework. I created Spring Webflow. I created Spring Social and Spring Mobile, and I worked on the core Spring framework. That's all the techie stuff. I was doing, that's still where I wanted to be with our core Spring team, and the infusion of the money allowed me to do that without giving up control of the company.
About what year is this?
2007.
Okay.
And we didn't have, we raised, in reality we needed the money to get, but we didn't go out looking for the money because we were desperate. We raised it because we knew we could reach our potential faster, and we were able to, and so we didn't have to raise it, but we did, but that helped with our valuation. You never want to raise money if you
Right.
if you need to, because then you're totally at the mercy of the VCs, and they'll take everything from you, like they do in Shark Tank or whatever. Then my other contribution to the business too was our user conferences. So every year we had multiple conferences. We had one every year in the U.S., a big one, like our Java 1 kind of thing, Spring 1. And then we had one in Europe, and the one in the U.S. was in Hollywood, Florida, 2 hours away, right on the beach. There was I picked that.
Just because you didn't want to drive too fast?
Too far, yeah. No, but it was an awesome location, destination for developers. We had the early December there every year. And so I was the director of that conference, the technical director, and helped us build out assemble the speakers, the content, worked with a partner, a great guy named Jay Zimmerman, to run those year after year. And we had 500 attendees. By their last one, they had 1,500 attendees, and that's at $1,700 a person. So it was also a significant revenue generator as well. But that was my other main contribution. But I'd say, I think where I did the best was in things related to the community. Working on the technology, building the community that way, working on the training, building the community that way, working on our user conferences, building the community that way to grow the adoption. But we made money off the training, but for the other stuff, it just gave us a strong user base, a very large user base, and then we could target them for commercial products and support on top of that. And that was the basis of the model. So I definitely stayed at the bottom, more focused on community stuff.
Just to interrupt you with a quick note, I know this place, so we've got a train theme going on. We've also installed a train tracks nearby, so
yeah,
just for the effect, we timed it right too.
Yeah. So that was 2007. So we went from, I guess, 20 people at the time, a couple $1 million in revenue, to 150 employees worldwide, and approaching $50 million in revenue, which was cool. And that's when I heard that there was another buyer interested in our company. So I think Oracle actually made another offer, which we declined. But then Rod got to know Paul Maritz, who used to be very high up at Microsoft, but then was the CEO of VMware. Have you guys heard of VMware? I'm sure most of you guys have. Big company. And VMware was worried about their core virtualization business becoming commoditized over time, their core hypervisor technology. So they wanted to look for new areas for growth. And they saw what we were doing and how it sat on top of their foundation, as sort of the next level up, and they were like, we want to be in that. So, and we want to do that because we're facing threats from Microsoft and Citrix and other competitive technologies. So we got kind of caught up in this big technology turf war, where you had a big company with lots of cash that saw us as strategic for them. And Rod, very good salesperson, very good at showing the value in our company and communicating the vision of our company and the potential, convinced Paul Moritz to make an offer to buy our company for $420 million. And that was in August of 2009. And so here we are. We went from 25 million from Oracle to 420 from VMware, and it was split into two parts. 358 million was outright cash and restricted stock for the owners in SpringSource, and then 58 million was for employee retention. So for key employees after the acquisition.
You're right. You guys did pay engineers a lot.
Yeah. Right. And a condition of the deal, too, on our side, the owners that were to benefit the most, because they were the principal owners in the company, our portion was split between cash and restricted stock that would vest. And we had to accept that because they didn't want us just taking the cash and saying, see you later, I'm going to the islands or whatever. And at the time, the stock market was August of 2009, right? So March of 2009 was the very bottom of the financial meltdown. So we benefited. That was a good deal for us, right? To get most of this in stock. All we had to do was deliver for them what they needed us to do, invest. And at least in terms of financially, we'd be okay. Yeah, I think the price of VMware at the time was $34 a share or something like that. It was just very depressed. So
How
that
about
was
by
just,
the time you guys vested?
It was $87 a share.
Nice.
So, that was just luck, really, timing-wise. But, whatever. But that obviously was hard to say no to. But Rod still considered saying no to that. He was like, we could be $1 billion company. I was like, you're crazy.
Well, at that time you were 50 million.
Yeah, that's right.
That was earnings or sales or what?
That was sales, revenue.
What was earnings?
I don't remember. It was, we were profitable.
So you use the VCs to actually populate your management staff?
Yes, that was and pay our engineering team. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah, obviously.
Yeah. So it was huge for allowing us to have a dedicated engineering team.
And no joking about that, because by the time that they were doing the 50 million in revenues, right? You're focused more on engineering, right? And you could focus.
Yes, I could stay focused on one thing, the one dimension. It's really hard to do. If you guys ever read Geoffrey Moore's stuff, Inside the Tornado, Crossing the Chasm, he talks about 3 dimensions of a business, and to be successful, you need to do 2 really well. And the first dimension is technology leadership, and we believed we needed to do that well because we had to displace and establish technology. And the second was operational excellence. You need to be able to, your process is very important. You need a model that allows you to scale. You need people that allow you to do that. And then customer intimacy was the other dimension. So for us, it was, to do all those things is really hard, but even to do 2 well is difficult. But it was A and B for us. And yeah, we were doing both as part of our jobs when really I should just be focusing on the technology, and the VC money allowed us to have that focus, which was huge. So, because the technology was being neglected, quite honestly, until that. So we did accept the offer from VMware, and then I became a VMware employee, like the rest of my team. We became a division of VMware, and they were great to us. I mean, they allowed us to grow tremendously, I don't know the last count in terms of how much revenue we're generating as a division now, but it's over 300 million per year, I know, total, in terms just from the technologies and services that developed around our foundation, our open source foundation. So hopefully they thought they got their money back and saw it as a strategic investment that was a good decision.
Rod seems to have been right about the billion-dollar company too, huh? With VMware.
What's that?
Within VMware, so you have 300 million in sales
sure.
there.
That's right. At least I'm not sure what the most the number is now, but I know they're doing well. So I worked as a employee for VMware for about 2.5 years, and then stepped away, just because I had worked on Spring for almost 10 years, and I'm kind of person where I don't want to quit until I feel like the job is done. So one of my goals was bring in the next group that was really going to help the technology continue to grow and improve. And we worked really hard once we were able to focus on engineering, on hiring good people that we trained and groomed to become leaders of the technology that could take over what we were doing. And our technical lead, Jürgen, who's a co-founder, most awesome engineer I've ever met, with us from the beginning. Number 2 in the company, really, Austrian guy. He's still there. He still leads the Spring team, and is one of my good personal friends. And so I'm still involved, but I'm no longer paid to work on Spring. But I can still work on it because it's open source. So they're always like, can you, do some, this Jira issue here? Can you work on that? Can you fix that bug? I'm like, yeah, sure. so from time to time, I'll still do some work on the framework.
So you're still getting Jira tickets.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
So what happened after Spring? Did you want to move closer to the beach?
Yeah. Before I get into that, any
here.
other questions about Spring Source? So that story was from 2004 to 2009. Really up until 2012. I mean, the acquisition was in 2009. But any questions about that whole story before we go next chapter? Yeah.
All right. So in the very beginning, you said that all of you were so separated geographically. How did you manage with so many remote co-founders stick together for so long?
It was a challenge, and I think one of the things that we did in the beginning that I think was valuable was we took a short-term project took on a short-term project together to all work together for one client, just to see how we work together and to build trust with one another. And that went really well, actually. And we were like, we like each other. We've got this great potential. We'd also meet at user conferences where we were speaking. So it was mainly just about building trust and finding opportunities to do that, even though we were distributed. Because we could do the work anywhere. All we needed was a computer and the internet, really, and version control system. But then, once we felt like we're a good team and we can get things done, I think we all said, well, let's try to build our little business in our area of the world. So we had Interface 21 US grow up. We had the company in the UK. We had a company in Australia. We had a company later in Germany. We had one in the Netherlands. And, we were responsible for our territories. And we just, it was through the trust that we had established early on working together that I think was really important. Yeah.
Did you have disagreements on the direction of the software? And if so, how did you handle that?
It's a good question. Yes. I would say that the biggest disagreement came over whether to charge for the software or not. It wasn't so much about the technical features, although there was some of that. And if you looked at Rod and Jürgen, they were really like yin and yang. Rod, the big visionary, big idea, but not good in the details. We had Jurgen, very conservative, slow to move, but very detail-oriented, quality-oriented. So they would fight butt heads quite a bit. Rod would come up with some crazy idea and check it all in, you know, and to the code base, and Jurgen would be like, "What are you doing?" Rip it all out. Rod would want to start charging for stuff, and Jurgen would be like, "What are you doing? We can't do that," right? And so there was some battling over that, and I was very much like, look, you can't charge for the base software. That's got to be free. That's our in to be able then to monetize. And you know, the commercial stuff needs to be built clearly on top. You can't be baiting and switching people. The community's not going to like it. So I think that was early on a point that we had to address. Yeah.
I've always been curious when a company like yours gets an offer from an outside company, how much weight do the VCs playing saying yes or no to the offer?
They played weight, but they definitely had a voice for sure. And I think the voice was mixed at some level. I think they were happy, but I think they also thought we could do better at some level. But ultimately,
a multiple of 4 for their investment. Nowadays, you hear, they want 7, 10, 15. I just wondered if it was good. I mean,
I think they wouldn't have minded if we had said no and kept going. I personally think we made the right call, and Rod ultimately made the call. He talked to everybody about it, and I was like, "Take the money." Yeah.
Did being burnt out a little way into that?
Not at the time. It did early on, and it almost led to a big mistake. If we had sold the company to Oracle, we would have regretted it. Yeah. Yeah. You've been waiting around, Logan. What's your question?
Do you think the company would have been as successful if you had declined the offer with VM?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I think we were acquired at the right. We sold the business at the right time. We were at the height of that open source business model trend. I mean, has there been a pure open source company that's been acquired for that much since then? I don't know. That's a good, I would like to research that and see. But I think that, we were definitely, there was a trend involved. We were caught up in a technology turf war, and that increased our valuation to, high multiples, right? So I don't know. I think we would have, I think the main thing, besides the money, the money's not the most important thing. It was, the other thing that made the difference was we felt VMware would take good care of the technology and the team, where Oracle absolutely would not. So, that was a huge part of the decision. So, it definitely was a good decision. Yeah.
It seemed to me like what you described, that the open source platform also allowed your group of people to bubble up together and get to know each other. Like it almost filtered all the people that were working on it to where you guys.
Yes.
Do you think that was a big part of
absolutely
that you had, or
yeah.
is that a characteristic you normally see with open source?
Yes. The best developers are active on open source projects, because they're leaders in their field. And, if you're a software developer, there's stuff that you're building that is, core to the business problem you're solving. That you keep that proprietary to your company, but that's not all you need to build robust software. There's a lot of general stuff, and the best developers work on that stuff. And then, and then they realize, why work on that alone? Because it has nothing to do with my business, when I can work on it in the open and collaborate with other A-list developers. So absolutely, that's why we never had a problem finding high-quality engineers through our community to join our team. So, all the guys on my team were A guys. We had no B or C players in engineering. Yeah.
Did you encounter any competition along the way, either on the services side or with technology?
I definitely think we had a leg up, at least when it related to Spring. So if a company was interested in Spring, once we changed our name to Spring Source, they'd call us. So we didn't have a lot of competition for that. But certainly you had, bigger companies that might have huge investments in IBM WebSphere or BEA WebLogic, or later Oracle WebLogic, and other more, the more established legacy application server models. And we weren't able to get some of those companies to budge, to move, to shift their investment in their infrastructure. So, but we could still sell them training though, because we figured that because of our engineering skill, and especially Jurgen, Spring was very portable. So you could plug it in to an existing system without ripping out or disrupting the investment the organization had already made. So if a company didn't want to completely switch infrastructures and stop paying IBM and start paying us, we could at least have Spring plugged in to boost developer productivity and sell training, consulting, and support on Spring to them. So for that, we didn't have a lot of competition. We were very fortunate because we were from the source, the guys behind the technology. Yeah.
I was just going to ask, was the MySQL acquisition?
It was before. Yeah, it was before. Was that 2008?
Another big
yeah, JBoss, MySQL. Whatever. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the other ones, but yeah, those were around. Well, JBoss came, before, but I think MySQL was 2008. Yep.
How much of this was done informally, handshake? What kind of business arrangements did you have? Did you have personal legal representation?
Yes. Yeah, we had a. Early on we didn't. We didn't have any lawyers or anything, but later we did. We had a whole executive team, and we had attorneys that we worked with, especially for our mergers and acquisitions. So the way we grew, we acquired companies that already had commercial software that complemented Spring, and that was one path towards getting where we were. So we did a number of mergers and acquisitions. So that part was absolutely, carefully structured with the help of our CFO and attorneys. In terms of the structure, they were independent entities. Yeah, so there was Interface 21 US, UK, Australia, Germany, Netherlands. They were completely independent, not affiliated with one another at all. And then eventually they merged under a global corporation, a Delaware corporation that we set up. And that happened at the time we received VC funding, and they helped us with that.
Oh, so all this time you had a bunch of corporations that was SpringSource?
Yes, in different countries. So it was kind of complicated, and we had to get creative with how, when we exchanged our shares in the U.S. company for those in the global, we didn't have any tax consequences or anything like that. Yeah.
So you provided the software for free, but did you patent any of the underlying?
No. In fact, we had a thing on our website: no patents. We hate patents, because it was all about the open source model to drive adoption, and that's the opportunity, and through that community of people that trust you, use your software to then sell them something commercial. Yeah.
No. So did you have a sole provider company of your own before you merged? And so what was it called?
It's called Donald Enterprises. And it was just for a shell for getting paid for doing independent consulting on Spring and Java. Yeah.
Two questions. Were you ever attacked by patent holders? And has VMware started patenting stuff associated with Spring Service?
Not that I know of. No and no. Yeah, that I know of. Yeah. Any other questions? Hey.
So why should I use Spring over Java EE stuff today?
That's a good question. So Spring just released its most recent version, Spring Framework 4. So I helped from 1.9 to 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0 to 3.1, 3.2, and then I kind of stepped away. And the big 4.0 was handled by folks that had taken over my responsibilities. I think that the community is a lot bigger in terms of the integrations with different technologies. So I think that's the real strength of the framework is, I think Java EE has slowly built some of the same features, and we've helped simplify that core model, but Spring has continued to move forward in other sort of ancillary areas like Spring Data, Spring Social, Spring Mobile, Spring Batch.
When are you going to give a presentation on something else?
Happy to. Yeah, absolutely.
Does that mean I can ask you some questions about Spring's RESTful API? I was having some trouble with that.
Sure. Yeah. So cool. Yeah. So I led Spring MVC, which is so I helped build our RESTful API. Cool. And Spring Webflow too. If you ever, we fly Delta out of Melbourne International Airport. Anytime you guys have purchased Wi-Fi on Delta, use GoGo Wireless. Look and you'll see an execution key on the address bar. It says execution equals E1S1. That means session 1 of flow execution 1. That's Spring Webflow. The fingerprint of the technology is visible so GoGo in-flight Wi-Fi and that information system uses Spring behind the scenes, and that's cool. I love that when I go to places and I use a web app and I'm like, whoa, there's Spring. It's like, so every time you change your address through the United States Postal Service, that's Spring. NFL.com, NBA.com, NASCAR.com, that's Spring in the back end. And I can see the sort of signature for some of the components just by looking at the web pages. That's pretty cool. I enjoy that part of it.
So one of the other things I wanted to mention is it's really cool. You drove your Ferrari here today, right?
No, man.
That's right. So one of the really interesting things about geekdom really is it's not just about what you've built. So that part of the story is really, really interesting, of course. But I find what Keith's been doing since Spring really interesting as well. As in, the Spring exit didn't really go towards Ferraris and big, expensive yachts, right?
I have a Saab that is lime green that I bought in 2005 from proceeds from our first consulting contract that I was talking about. That was our real experience working together. I got paid in British pounds. That was really cool because the exchange rates was awesome. So it was like double once you converted it. And I went and bought my car in cash. I was like, sweet. But it's lime green or whatever because of Spring Source. My laptop bag was green. I had a green T-shirt. Everything was green, green, green. But yeah, that's what I drive still. And yeah, not into Ferraris.
So what have you been up to since?
Well, I mean, yeah. So I guess I like to think of myself as a serial entrepreneur. It was weird, I guess, to step away, and I really didn't know what I was going to do next. But I made a commitment. I was like, I like where I live. Well, first I want to focus on my family because I had sacrificed a lot in that area, and I want to focus on my community where I live in Brevard County. And so when I stepped away, in 2012, I toyed with starting another business, and I had kind of an idea, but I realized as I was thinking about getting going with it, I was working more on the admin stuff rather than actually building the product because I wasn't sure if I was ready to just jump right in, and I didn't feel like the idea was important enough. So I decided, I want to get involved more volunteering in my community, and really, especially with the downturn in the economy, I looked at it like, well, I benefited tremendously at a time where, the financial, obviously the economy was in the toilet, quite frankly, and that was just luck, right? Really, that part of it. So, I felt like I want to do something meaningful that'll enable me to help folks that have been impacted by the downturn, the economic downturn, here in the county. So I started volunteering at local charities, researching the different charities here in our area, their missions, what they do, and I knew I wanted to work with folks that had been impacted by the economy and the economic downturn. And from that grew the idea for what I'm doing now, which is called SteadyTown. So I could talk about that briefly. Are you guys still awake? Yeah, I know. How long have we been going?
A little over 45 minutes.
Oh, that's not too bad. Okay.
There's Mountain Dew in the back if you guys want to get some more caffeine.
Yeah. So So the first charity I really aligned myself with and was most impressed by here in the county for helping folks that were struggling is the South Brevard Sharing Center here in Melbourne. They do a lot of really good work, and I joined their board. I volunteered there, and I joined a committee that they were sitting on called Children in Transition, and it's chaired by a Brevard Public Schools employee. Her name's Dr. Sally Shin, and she works at the school board. And this committee is focused on the issue of child homelessness in our county. And I also watched that 60 Minutes documentary on the issue of homelessness in Central Florida, family homelessness. So it's not like the bum on the street kind of thing, but it's the family with kids kind of thing that is, because of the downturn in the economy, has lost their home or at risk of losing their home. And what I saw in the statistics was interesting, that before, like in 2007, there was maybe 100. They were still tracking these statistics. They track it at the school level because when you register your child in school, you have to show proof of residency. So if you can't show that, then you're considered in transition. So before the downturn, there maybe was 100 kids in Brevard, 150. Last year, at the end of last year, there was like 1,600. So it's gone up tremendously. And then, so on this committee, you had various agencies that wanted to help and knew about the issue, and you'd Sally trying to figure out how can we address this issue. And the idea for a program came up to partner with the schools that know these families to help them, where the schools could refer the families to an agency for help, and then there could be close collaboration between the schools and the folks providing the help. And focus on homeless prevention and rapid rehousing really is the core mission there. But there's not a lot of money in the nonprofit world, and the existing agencies at the table were already resource strapped, and no one really had the resources to take on some new program. And what I saw, there was that, and then there was not a lot of coordination between agencies, because you have one agency that would do one thing that families need, like help getting child care for their kids so they can work. Another agency that might help with food and other things like that. Maybe another with the housing piece. But there wasn't one that was really coordinating things together as part of this community of nonprofits that work together. And they're like, community. I like communities. I know communities. I know how to build communities. So that's where it kind of light bulb went off. I can actually help here, and I think I can build something that's unique and help a lot of people. So I volunteered to help set up this program that's now called Steady Family. At the time, we just called it Family First. It was the first name we came up with, but we later changed it to Steady Family. And we did a pilot last year, for the school year last year, with one school. So the school guidance counselors identified the families, referred the families to us. We do the coordinated assessment to assess what's needed, and it's focused around homeless prevention and rapid rehousing, helping families be able to have permanent housing that they can afford so their kids are stable and can get to school every day. So in the pilot program, we helped 18 families. We spent about $30,000. And then we presented the results of our pilot to the school foundation, run by Janice Kershaw and Brevard Public Schools, and also BB&T Bank, which was a private financial institution, very willing, aware of this issue and wanting to help. And they had actually committed $1 million to the issue of family homelessness in Central Florida across several counties. So they'd already supported like Orange County, Polk County, some other counties. And Sally and I were able to present to BB&T that was looking to make a grant to Brevard for this issue. And then I got a call over the summer when I was back home in Alabama from Wendy at BB&T, and she's like, we're going to give you guys, or the foundation, $125,000 to help the issue of family homelessness in Brevard through the school foundation. And I was super excited. I thought that was awesome. So that was the basis for this next year of growth to do more. And I'm like, okay, that's responsibility. They're entrusting us with that amount of money to help as many people as we can in the right way. So I said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have a $300,000 budget total about, and the foundation had some additional monies raised by the Space Coast Area Realtors. So all total, we had about $150,000 to work with for this year. And then the other half, I would invest myself on salaries, on staff, because to help in the right way, you need staff to really do good assessments, or you're just handing out money and you're not really helping. So we hired a great team, put a great team together. Logan's mom works for me. But we took on, what was a pilot program in one area of the county in South Brevard to this partnership with the school foundation, and BB&T is our first real strategic grantor to expand the program to go countywide, and hired we call family coaches or case managers in Titusville and Cocoa and Melbourne and Palm Bay, and went from 1 school to 7 schools. And so far this year we've had 100 referrals for families through those schools. We've done over 30 rehousings. And it's what it's like. I mean, you've heard your mom talk about it. Those are the best days when we get the family get into a home that didn't have one before. And what I've liked the most is doing it in a way where we work with partners. So we're not doing it all ourselves, but we're working with the partner agencies and helping make them more efficient. And one thing I've noticed is there's often money that goes unspent in the nonprofit world because there's nobody to manage it and to see that it's spent wisely. So our principal partner for housing is the Coalition for the Hungry and Homeless. They have plenty of money for housing, supportive housing leases, but they didn't have the staff to do the case management. So because I was investing in that, there was a clear partnership opportunity, and I was able to help them spend more of their money to help more people, which would have been lost otherwise. And that's been really cool, is navigating to see where can we work with what's already out there and bring agencies together, and we're doing sort of the coordinated assessment. And the other thing that we're doing is the information and data tracking to show results, and that's often missing too. And that's hopefully going to help us continue to grow. My vision is for this program to be partnered with every school in the county. I have a team of 7 right now, but have double that team for next year and do twice as much, and have a model that can be applied in other counties as well across the state. So I'm enjoying it. I feel like I wanted to do something meaningful, and I feel like I found it. When you get to that next chapter, you're always like, what am I going to do? And figuring that out is kind of hard. But I think what I realized, if I just put myself out there and get in the community and see what people are dealing with day to day, try to understand that's going to be the best way for me to figure out my calling.
So, the full disclosure, SteadyTown is also incubated out of here.
Yes.
And it keeps being very humble. It's had crazy amounts of growth, because I still remember, like, around 12:30 a.m. I got a text message saying, "I got it, SteadyTown." I was like, okay. And from then to now, it's had quite an impact in the local community.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying the work. So. And
of course, you guys thinking about it all the time too, right?
Yes. Kira's like, yeah, you think about it all the time, like you did the Spring Source, but that's okay. But that's the nature of us entrepreneurs, right? We love the work. I love the work. And we're workers. Yeah.
Are you is it a kind of situation where sometimes other organizations can't take yes for an answer? I mean, are you encountering resistance because it's a different culture, different way of doing things?
I don't think so. I think at some level, not so much. I think we've got a good strategy where we're saying we're going to help you do more with our partners that we're working with, and we're doing a lot of the legwork that they would normally have to do themselves. So the guys, it relates to someone getting affordable childcare or housing. There's a lot involved to make that happen. We're investing in technology to automate a lot of that stuff. So we're helping make our partners more effective at what they do, so they get more money. So I think that's been a good approach. And then the other approach, I think how we're different is we're distributed again, like, because I'm used to that. Like, we don't have a central office. We're across the county. We go to the families, get to understand their environment, their support system, what a day is like in their lives, and then try to focus on their strengths to facilitate opportunity. And I like that approach a lot. Where I think there is challenges is because we're a small company, startup. We're very efficient. We want to be efficient. But then, yeah, anytime you take money from someone else, there's a certain level of reporting that has to be done, and obviously, you need to. You're entrusted with that, so you've got to do your job of managing that effectively. But you don't want to lose the efficiency there. So I think where we might push is to try to not get caught up in too much the red tape of the sort of that can be common in grant awards. And we do that through showing our results, and how our programs differ and how efficiency is everything. So, but I think if there's one area where it can be a challenge, it's that. So it's, yeah, hey. Yeah, Gary, hey.
One trend that I've seen throughout all the different things that Keith has done, whether it was his job at Harris or with Spring Source and now with SteadyTown, is that the way that he operates is he really gets ingrained in what the problem is before trying to solve it. Where I know in the software world, I saw a lot of times that you were trying to solve a problem before you figured out what the problem was in the first place. And through all these different projects, he's done that, and even continuing. I know, fair enough, but he's continuing on the technology path as well with this nonprofit, or he's planning to.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to make that successful, he really needs to know what the problem is and what the needs are.
Yeah, that's right.
That's something that he's really doing well.
Yeah. Thank you.
By the way, just wanted to point out, so the shirt that we've got on, you see a couple of people in the room that have the shirt on. So this is a shirt you can't buy. You have to volunteer and contribute a good amount at TrepHub before you have one of these things. So Keith is very hands-on, and you'll find him here at TrepHub quite often.
Yeah, you guys see me around, yeah. So I'm a member. I have my access card. Where is it? I don't know. It's in my wallet here. I don't want to rip out the mic, but
we're open 24/7.
It's 24/7. It's cool. So we basically pay $150 a month, and we get 24/7 access, and we can use this space. Is very versatile. So if we need, more private area, we can get that. If we need more open workspace, we can do that. If we need conference room, we can do that. If we mailbox, we got that over there, for mail and stuff, and got all the goodies, the Twizzlers and the drinks. What else do you need? So. Yeah.
It sounds like the SteadyTown is a big step away from the technical side of what you did.
Well, it's a functional area. Yes, it's different.
Has it been hard to keep yourself away from trying to turn it into something technical?
Well, technology plays a role in every business today, so it's going to be huge, I think, for our growth and what I'm doing. We need good data and good information to be able to help in the right way and to be able to show our results. So a high-quality information system is needed, and I don't think there's anything out there that does what I want.
So you're still planning on putting a technical,
yes,
very heavy technical.
Absolutely, but I need to know what we need first, and that's why. So right now we're integrating a lot of existing tools, but they don't all work so well together, and I think I have a lot of ideas to how we can actually have our own tool that is, does exactly what we need to do our jobs and show that we get, good results. But you're right. I mean, at Spring was not solving a specific business problem. It was solving technical problems for developers. So, like, if you weren't a developer and I want to talk to you about Spring, you look at me like, what do you work on? Like my parents never understood what Spring was, right? And I'm at heart, I'm an application developer. I like solving business problems for regular people. And I feel like, I stepped away from that role to focus on infrastructure development because I felt like the infrastructure wasn't good enough for application developers to be productive. But I always wanted to go back to application development. That's because I enjoy working with, in functional areas, like in this case, a nonprofit, helping families break out of poverty, really, is what it's about. And building tools for that. So I'm excited about applying technology to that problem next, however long, wherever it takes me.
Are you guys, doing a lot of work with, local government and, county government to try to
Nothing yet.
push and pull with them?
No, we're in build bootstrap mode, and I'm trying to want to build a great product before I really go to say, okay, I'm ready to scale it. And so, I like to think slow in that respect. I'm blessed to be able to not have so much pressure financially, where I can make that investment. And then we're continuing to work with the school foundation, and that's our only source of funding really right now, and it's all assistance money. It's no salaries. So we'll want to get to a place where someday we can raise money to cover our program cost of our staff. But right now I'm not focused on that. Yeah.
Short of rehousing all 1,600 families, do you have any immediate goals both in the nonprofit and the community?
Well, our goal with each family is self-sufficiency. So helping them where they don't need us anymore. So that's kind of what we make the conversation about. So that kind of keeps us focused there. And, there are lots of barriers to that. So we say, we're focused, housing is one barrier. But, our first goal is to get a family out of survival mode so they can focus on growth. And then we help them figure out what areas they want to grow in based on what they're good at, what their strengths are. And that's, the ultimate goal is where they don't need us anymore, they're fine, and they're contributing. And along the way, our goal is to help them eliminate the barriers to growth. And there are a number of them, which I could talk long about. So.
I keep hearing around when Mom's talking that sometimes, the families end up being their own worst enemies.
There's some of that, yeah. I think a lot of our families, I think in general, but I think you have to walk in their shoes too, of what they're facing. But yeah, that is a challenge.
Well, so if you'd like to make some closing remarks, I know we've been going for a little while. Maybe we should start wrapping up this section and get everybody together.
I just say, guys, if I can help you in any way, if you're just let me know. I mean, I'm curious. How many of you guys are considering, maybe starting your own company or teaming up with a small business owner? So we got a number. Awesome. And I've talked to some of you. I know. That's what I love to see, and that's why I support TrepHub, because I'm just trying to help facilitate more of that here. That's, if there's anything I can do to help, just let me know. That's why I'm here, is to help see more small business and in Brevard County on the Space Coast. And I think I love what Ahmed, you and Brandon have done with TrepHub. It's starting point for that. So.
Thanks, and the credit really goes to a lot more, all of our volunteers, and the real power behind the scenes, Carrie. So thanks to Carrie, we've got all these cool chairs and the,
the
and the paintings. Yeah, Carrie literally painted that herself.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, weren't you like, we're going to paint tomorrow? And I was like, have you ever painted before? And you were like, no.
No, yeah.
And I was like, what are you doing? It's like, I need to call my wife. So. Yeah.
That was great. Well, so we'll end this section here. However, please feel free to hang out, get some more soda and pizza, and come up and talk to Keith yourself and introduce yourselves to each other, because you'll be surprised who you get to meet here. Once again, thank you so much for coming out tonight and making our first story time great success. Our next one's coming up on March 20th, when we'll have Scott Sorensen, who is voted Businessman of the Year.
You guys know Scott Sorensen? He's very influential in Brevard County.
So we'll have him here, the same type of format. I won't poke him. I probably won't
He's
even
more
know.
likely to wear a suit than me, probably.
So thank you again, and please let's have a big round of applause for Keith and Carrie.